Okay, so we've cut our biscuit joints now. We're going to begin the gluing process. We're going to start with the two hardest corners. So we're going to do, and the most important actually, we're going to do the mortise and tenon and the lap joint first. I grabbed a couple corner clamps. I've got my glue. I also grabbed a couple of wet paper towels just so that I can wipe any glue off of my hands before I move on to the next joint. That way I save myself some time sanding later. So we'll start with this one. I'll go ahead and get this set up. When you first put it in, before I put the glue on, I'm going to show you this. You want to make sure that you get your corners lined up pretty precisely. Otherwise your frame will be out of square. So that looks good. These are close enough, so I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on. Okay, so I've glued together my mortise and tenon joint. I've wiped any excess glue off to save me from having to sand a bunch later. I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to go ahead and glue my lap joint together. So we're going to set both of these aside and let them dry, and then we'll come back later and we'll glue our biscuit joints. So we finished gluing our mortise and tenon and lap joints, and now I'm going to show you how to glue your biscuit joints. But before I do that, I'm going to line these up and just check my angles one more time, because this is my time to fix anything that might be off. So I'm going to line up this side and push it together. So I've got a slight gap here. I'll go ahead and rotate it so you can see it in the camera. It's not much of one, but if I wanted to fix it, I would figure out which is my high point or the heel that I have going on, and I'd go ahead and just put a slight pencil line along there. And then I'd take it over to the disc sander and just lightly hit it until that pencil line that I put. So this part is just a little bit high, and if I were to remove this, then it would allow this to go together. I'm not too worried about it because I know that I can fix this with glue and just sanding it down once I put it together. So I'm just going to go ahead and go with it. But if you care, that is an option to go fix it on the disc sander. So I've put the biscuits in here. Now I'm going to push it together just to make sure that everything fits nice and tight. And that works for me. There's a little gap here, but again, I'll fill that with glue and sanding. So now I'm ready to actually put the glue on. So I'm going to completely cover this edge in glue. I'm going to go ahead and put the biscuit in and put some glue on this edge of the biscuit as well. So one thing that is really important on this step, once I have it together, is to look down it, and sometimes the pieces won't be on the same plane. One piece will be higher, or they'll toe in. So I want to look down it and make sure it's flat. And if it's not, I want to adjust it now before it's completely glued. So I'll loosen these clamps just a little bit. This piece is a little high, so I'm going to loosen the clamps just a little bit and whack it a couple times with the mallet. That looks better. Tighten it back up. Fill that gap. So something that can happen as you go to clamp these together is, as you're trying to get this gap to close and to line up, you can actually toe your pieces in like this, which creates a bigger gap on the back side and can create issues later on that are harder to deal with. So one thing you want to make sure as you're clamping this together is that your boards are actually flat. So one of the ways we do that is we'll clamp two sides of it. These two sides will get them where they need to go. And then these we can shift, and we'll make sure these two boards are flat. And then this piece can actually shift whichever way we need it to go, and make sure that this is flat as we clamp it together. So you clamp these two sides first so that they're flat, and then shift and move this board until it's where you want it, and then go ahead and clamp these two sides. Okay, so we've let this glue for about 20 minutes. Now I'm going to take it out of the clamps. I'm going to go ahead and fill the gaps with just a little bit of glue and then sand over that just to give it a nicer finish before I take it to the router. So I sanded this just to get any high points of glue off. One, to fill the gaps, and then get any high points of glue off the front and the back so that I can go ahead and router this. If you have a wide belt sander, this is the time to use it because it allows you to get this completely flat. With a hand sander, you have a little bit more of a chance to accidentally taper your edges or not get it completely flat. Something I do want to mention is that if you're using a hand sander and you're sanding it, make sure that you don't go off the edges, because that will taper them slightly and it won't be completely flat. So just be aware of that. Make sure you stay as centered as possible and not going too far to one edge or the other.